राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवर धारे। यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन जमुना तीरावनचारी जमुना तीरावनचारी अजय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवर धारे। जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवर धारे। यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन जमुना तीरावनचारी जमुना तीरावनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवर धारे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe. Jaya Jagannatha Baladeva Subhadra Mai Jaya Sudarshana. Jaya Gauranitai, 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 Jaya Gauranitai. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gaura Haribol, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribol. Jam Vishnupad, Paramhamsa Puri Jagacharya Ashtotar This Divine Grace of Vaishnava Arvinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jam Vishnupad, Paramhamsa Puri Jagacharya Ashtotar This Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada Ki Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Granthra Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Ki Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narotamam Daivim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavat Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopakumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 3, text number 4. No, chapter number 4, text number 5 and 6. So I will read the verse and the translation of 5 and 6 we will all recite. Tathapi tadabhi pretam janan aham arindama Prishtato Nangavam Bhartuhu Pada Vishleshanakshamah. Tatha api, yet in spite of, Tat Abhipretam, his desire, Janan, knowing, Aham, I, Arim Dama, the subduer of the enemy, Vidura, Prishtataha, behind, Anga Anvagamam, followed, Bhartuhu of the master, Pada Vishleshana, separation from his lotus feet, Akshamaha, not being able. Translation. Yet, in spite of my following his desire to destroy the dynasty, O Arindama, Vidura, I followed him because it was impossible for me to bear separation from the lotus feet of the master. Text 6. Adraksham Ekam Asinam Vichinvan Daitam Patim Sriniketam Saraswatyam Kritaketam aketanam adraksham ekamasinam adraksham ekamasinam vichinvandaitam patim vichinvandaitam patim Sriniketam Saraswatyam Sriniketam Saraswatyam Kritaketam Aketanam Kritaketam Aketanam Adraksham Vishinvandaitam Patim Sriniketam Saraswatyam Kritaketam Aketanam. Please chant. Ekamasinam Vichirvandaitam Patim Sriniketam Saraswatyam Matajis Adraksham ekamasinam Vichinvandaitam Patim Sriniketam Saraswatyam Kritaketam. Word to word, please repeat after me. Adraksham, I saw. Ekam, alone. Asinam, sitting. Which in one, deeply thinking. Daitam, patron. Patim, master. Sriniketam, the shelter of the goddess of fortune. Saraswatyam, on the bank of the Saraswati. Kritaketam, taking shelter. Aketanam, being situated without a shelter. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki. Translation. Thus following, I saw my patron and master, Lord Shri Krishna, sitting alone and deeply thinking, taking shelter on the bank of the river Saraswati, although he is the shelter of the goddess of fortune. Purport. Those who are in the renounced order of life often take shelter underneath a tree. The Lord was found by Uddhava in that condition of taking shelter, as do persons who have no shelter. Because he is the proprietor of everything, everywhere is his shelter, everywhere is under his shelter. The entire material and spiritual cosmic manifestation is sustained by him, and therefore he is the shelter of everything. So there was nothing astonishing in his taking shelter in the way of the unsheltered who are in the renounced order of life. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagra Jatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschati Deshitarine He Krishna Karuna Sindho Deen Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Thus following, I saw my patron and master, Lord Shri Krishna, sitting alone and deeply thinking, taking shelter on the bank of the river Saraswati, although he is the shelter of the goddess of fortune. This is actually Vidura's analysis, his observation, that the Lord has taken shelter. He is the shelter of shelters, but he has taken shelter on the bank of the Saraswati. And the Lord is also thinking. Lord is also thinking. There was an advertisement a while ago, very while ago, long time ago. They said thinking is such a waste of time. Advertisement said, just do, enjoy, like that. However, in devotional life, as we, this is the path of self-realization. So then as we move ahead, then introspective contemplation, thoughtfulness are normal qualities that are developed on the way. This we see anybody in the mode of goodness can be contemplative, thoughtful, reflective. It's very natural. For devotees, it is even much more so. Because as we gain control and mastery over the mind, then through the intelligence we can start analyzing and understanding our own selves and the anarthas that lay within, and the conditioning and the qualities that need to be worked on, that need to be purified, one can become conscious. So this is thoughtfulness from a devotee's perspective. It's interesting to think about what the Lord must be thinking. Because Krishna is also thinking. He's in deep contemplative meditation. What is Krishna thinking about? Who knows? Maybe his pure devotees know what he's thinking about. This particular verse is talking about the concept of Ashray Tattva. The theme is Ashray Tattva. In the Bhagavatam, we know that there are 10 subject matters in the Bhagavatam. What are the 10 subject matters in the Bhagavatam? Sarga, Visarga, Sthana, Poshana, Manvantareshu, Ishanu, Katha, Nirodho, Mukti, Ashraya. These are 10 subject. Bhagavatam means this is the 10 themes that you will find recurring in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. What is the Bhagavatam about? Every day, Srila Prabhupada constituted the study of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam in every ISKCON temple all over the world. How important he felt this book is, that when in the 1960s, early 1960s, in Delhi, while he was still distributing Back to Godhead magazines, when one army officer, retired army officer, whom he was distributing these newsletters, Back to Godhead magazines too, they said that, Swamiji, why you don't write books? You should write book. Later the people will, this magazine, what, they will just take it and throw it away, but book will remain. So when Prabhupada was contemplating, he chose the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Of all the books, he could have started with Mahabharata also, he could have started with anything. But he chose the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam as a magnum opus, because he understood that this scripture can delineate the essence of spiritual life, which is the process of bhakti yoga. In the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, in these 10 subject matters, Sarga means primary creation, Visarga means secondary creation, Sthana is the maintenance, Poshana is the nourishment, then Uti is the urge of creation, Manvantareshu is, Manvantara is the Manvantara avatars of the Lord, Ishanu Katha is the story of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Nirodho, Mukti Rashra, Nirodho is the winding up of all energies, how annihilation happens. Mukti is liberation, and Ashraya means the Samam Bonam. Srila Prabhupada translates Ashraya as Samam Bonam. That is the be all and end all of everything. And what is Ashray Tattva? Ashray Tattva is Krishna himself. The first 9 cantos of the Bhagavatam come to this point of Ashray Tattva, which is Krishna himself. That's the 10th canto, the lotus face, the Mukharvind of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is represented, all his limbs are represented by the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. The prayers of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, they aim for this Ashray Tattva. You see, in the Bhagavatam, it's not like this. that Sarga, chapter, first canto, the second canto will talk about Sarga, then Visarga, then Manvantari, Shvisha. It's not only in order. You will find different parts talking about different things. So now in the 10th, now in this particular verse is hinted and indicated at Ashray Tattva. Uddhava is actually saying the Supreme Lord is taking shelter, who is the shelter of all shelters. So this is like it's a devotional, because the Uddhava is narrating. So he is mentioning it in a devotional context, shelter of all shelters. So Ashray Tattva is what? So where do we find this in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam? You will find it in all the prayers. All the prayers of the different devotees, they are taking shelter of the Supreme Lord. That is Ashray Tattva. What does Ashray mean? Ashray Tattva is Krishna, who is the ultimate shelter. Shelter does not mean that somebody who merely protects or merely comforts or is powerful. Shelter means that it exists independently, it supports others without having to be supported, and it remains unchanged even when everything in this world keeps changing. This is the ultimate ashray. This is the definition of shelter. The etymology of shelter in a devotional context. This is what it is. Krishna is shelter because the universe rests on his energy. All the consciousness rests on his marginal potency. And time is also his will. Even dharma, it depends on him. So everything, nothing exists along Krishna, everything exists because of Krishna. Mattam parataram nanyat kinchidasti dhananjaya mai sarvamidam protam sutre mani ganaiva. In the Gita, what does he say? Everything rests on me as pearls are strung on a thread. So this way, Krishna declares himself as being the supreme shelter. Why can no one else be the final shelter? Because within this system, everything is temporary, it is dependent, and it itself is seeking shelter. For example, wealth. Wealth cannot be shelter because it decays after a while. Whatever is, assets, even in accounting language, we see that there is depreciation. That means whatever assets are there or whatever wealth is there, wealth doesn't only mean money, it comes in different forms. Actually, money also depreciates because it all depends upon foreign currency, which decides how much is the value of the Indian rupee. So every day people check how much of the dollar is the Indian rupee today, what is the valuation. So wealth, it decays. Relationships, material relationships cannot be shelter because they end sooner or later. They end. And you see how people become when they take shelter of material relationships, how they become when those relationships end. Either consciously they end or by the passage of time, but either way they have to end. Some people, they take shelter of wealth. They think that if I have money, I can do, I am protected. Actually not some people, almost all people take shelter of wealth. If I have a lot of bank balance, if I have a lot of money in my bank account, I am protected. That is the feeling that they get. You will find that most people's psychology in today's day is that have enough wealth in your bank account that you don't need to do anything more. And then after that you can do other things. Work on savings. This is the mindset of people, most people who are there. So what is their ashray? Wealth. They think that by creating wealth generation, by making investments, by having a regular steady flow of income. Sometimes they work on secondary income, tertiary income, not only one primary source. So they try to see that they get money from different sources. And they think that this is going to be my shelter. However, when the real problems of life come, which are janma mrityu jara avyadhi dukkha dosha anudarshanam, that time no wealth can help them. Because when disease comes, who can help? When the pain at the time of birth, everybody has to undergo. When death comes, that time what happens to all this money that is collected? It is just left in the bank account for another person who the person has to name in his will that he will enjoy. And a Jivatma whose karma is there to be born in wealth, he comes and takes all of that. So those people who work towards making wealth their shelter, what happens to them ultimately? They leave everything for somebody else. So the reality of life is that wealth cannot be a shelter because it is not permanent. It's not that wealthy people don't have problems. Actually, the issues that exist in wealthy families are so extreme. Anybody who has performed this service of fundraising, they know how it is, that what the reality of life is. One time I remember we had gone to one very, very wealthy person, and so he was a very big Bollywood producer, and now his wife was there, and the grandson. So grandson we were trying to cultivate. And when we spoke to the grandmother, she was 80 years old, so we said, and she seemed to be very devotional and humble. So we said, why don't you come to the temple? So she said that, my kidneys have failed, so I have to go dialysis every other day. And the next day of the dialysis, I am so weak that I cannot do anything. I'm so weak, I cannot do anything. So I'm sorry, I want to come to the temple, but I'm unable to. It is interesting that in their ground floor, we saw a big fleet of cars. And which one? All top-notch, exclusive luxury cars. There was a couple of BMWs, 2-3 BMWs were there. There was a Mercedes, of course, whichever was the latest one, and another 1-2 SUVs. We saw that, and how many people? There's just 2-3. Servants were used to roam in the bigger cars. That's called karma actually. Shri Radha Madhava Bhagavan ki, or Gaur Nitai ki, Jagannath bolte Subhadra ki. Servants roaming in BMWs, this was the situation. So she used to sit in these high quality cars and do what? Just go to the hospital for dialysis. That was the life. So how is wealth in any way proving to be a shelter which can remove the actual miseries and sufferings? Does it prove to be a shelter? It cannot be. Even wealthy people understand it. That beyond the point that once you have sufficient income, then what? What will we do with it? Then because they have that shelter has failed them, so they say that wealth may not be the shelter. Now I am not working because I need money. I am working because through me so many people's houses are being maintained. They talk like this. But as Krishna says in the Gita, ahankara vimudhatma kartahamiti manyate. That they think they are the doers. But actually, even if they are not there, those people will get their karma through some or the other medium. They are only representatives of people to give karma. That's it. And that's what all of us are in this life. We come in each other's lives, and there is some exchange of karmic reactions that we are supposed to enjoy or suffer at every given point in our life. Timing is like that. Timing is everything in life. At right time, we get things, and at wrong times we don't. People around us, they become instruments and they deliver us what we are supposed to get, what reactions we have committed. This is the law of karma. If we have been morally good to people, we have accrued good karma by which at the right time, then all these people, they will come to give it back to us in some or the other way. A person who becomes an authority figure becomes so because in the previous life he has been very pious in giving out people, in helping people selflessly. So now in this life he takes birth, and the others, by the law of karma, they have to give it back to him because they have loaned things from him, and now with interest they have to come to pay back. So then such people they'll become owners of very big companies, or big directors they'll become, by which all those people who have taken karma from him, who have collected it's on loan ultimately in this world. So then they have to come to give him back. This is how karma works. So that's how whatever one has done, one is actually reaping the fruits of one's action. So how can karma which will accrue wealth also be the shelter. Good actions cannot be shelter. Because no matter how much one performs good actions in this world, there is always something or the other, some bad karma that comes from somewhere, and one has to face those reactions also. Even if one has very good karma, which will result in Janma, Aishwarya, Shruta and Shri, it will result in high birth, it will result in high education, it will result in good looks, and it will result in opulences, money, wealth. Good karma will result in this. So one may think, let me just do my duty. Let me just do my duty of being morally good and do my good karma all the time. People develop this kind of philosophy. Let me just become a good moralist. Let me become a good person. They teach that in schools, Secular schools, this is taught. Become a good person. Do good to others. But how can the performance of good karma also be a shelter? Because does it save one from the reality of life, which is birth, old age, disease and death? It doesn't save one from disease. It doesn't save one from old age. So then how can it be the shelter? It cannot be the shelter. Even relationships cannot be shelter. Material relationships, mind you. Material relationships. Because you see, material relationships, sooner or later, there is always some kind of exchange. Give and take is there. And then when the opposite person doesn't suit my purpose, then I am forced to give him up. So relationships can't be the shelter. Even institutions can't be shelter. Even institutions, because they fluctuate. To whatever is the political environment of a place, the institutions have to conform to it. And then how can they provide shelter? Because they're always fleeting and changing. For example, in Ukraine, if this is for practicing devotees and sadhakas, if one thinks that the shelter is in the institution, then what is going to happen? Disappointment. It's a disappointment. Like in Ukraine, if somebody wants to join ISKCON today, if somebody joins, or any other institution for that matter, it's a war-torn situation. It's a war-torn country. The country doesn't have any shelter. What any institution within that country will give shelter? Not possible. So these institutions, which are finally a part of this material world, they always fluctuate and change according to the political climate. And therefore, they cannot give fixed shelter. We talked about the definition of shelter, that it can support itself. Ashray. And therefore, institutions also cannot be. Even one's body and mind, one's own body and mind cannot be shelter. Because our body also, we don't know when it cooperates and when it doesn't. And needless to say, it's not the mind which cooperates sometimes. We know how much the mind cooperates. Hardly ever it does. So how can one put shelter and faith in one's own mind and body? Thus we can conclude that shelter cannot be provided by these fallible soldiers of Janma, Aishwarya, Shruta and Shri. So Krishna, why is Krishna the ultimate shelter? Because Krishna is the only shelter who can remove fear. Yad bhiveti swayam bhayam. Even fear personified is afraid of Krishna. And devotees who take shelter of Krishna thus can transcend personal losses. They can take physical and mental collapse. They are able to sustain. Institutional losses also they are able to bear. And even social uncertainty, which results from unstable relationships, they are able to tolerate because of shelter in Krishna. This is what we can analyze through the study of lives of devotees who have been practicing Krishna consciousness. That they have overcome such extreme situation which any other normal person would have badly broken down. In the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, we find that the practical application of this principle of Ashray, we find it in Gajendra Moksha. In the Gajendra Leela, we find that Gajendra takes shelter of the Lord when all his strength is exhausted. So this is in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 8. That Gajendra, who is the king of elephants, gets seized by a powerful crocodile while he is enjoying with his herd in the lake. The struggle continues for 1,000 years. His physical strength has failed. Collective help also fails. The other elephants are also not able to help him. Even his instinctive survival efforts, any animal is blessed with certain instinct by which he is able to protect himself and self-preserve, that also fails. So what happens? In this way, all his secondary shelters are removed. Now, what happens when Gajendra becomes fully exhausted? Because of the dint of his previously performed devotional service, a deeper memory within him awakens. And from his previous life impressions, he remembers the Supreme Lord. And he offers a lotus and he prays. In helpless dependence, he prays. So now we find, what is Gajendra doing? That he stops fighting the crocodile and he starts calling out the Lord. This is not just dependence, it is exclusive surrender. He stops putting his own effort. And what is the response that comes as a result of this? Krishna immediately appears as Vishnu. He comes as mounted on Garuda immediately. One of the acharyas mentioned that when on Gajendra's prayers, Krishna was so desperate to reach Gajendra that he was before Garuda. He was dragging Garuda behind. He was the one saying, Garuda, come. It's like that. That kind of desperation the Lord wanted to come on the devotee Gajendras calling out to him. So before Gajendra finishes his prayer, Krishna arrives there. And what happens? Gajendra is slain, the crocodile is slain, Gajendra is rescued, he is liberated. So we all have a certain concept of self-reliance. We think that if I do this, this will happen. If I do this, this will happen. And we will find that in this world, because we take all this shelter within ourselves, within our body, mind, within our wealth, within our intelligence, we take shelter like this in our own plan making. And it all breaks, collapses, you will find. In a practicing devotee's life, you can see it even more. It collapses. And these are all lessons which are meant to teach us that real ashray is to be taken off Krishna. We are all ashrita. All these, what we mentioned, wealth, beauty, etc., fame, etc., relationships, they are all nothing but ashrita. They are dependent on Krishna. As long as we think I can still manage, we are not sheltered. And what do we see? This example is of Draupadi, who receives Krishna's shelter after all her human support fails. Draupadi's shelter was her social relationships, her expectation from her social relationships that Bhishma, Drona, Kripacharya, all of them are present there. Brother-in-laws are present there. They are going to save me. She's crying out to them, help me, this Dushasan is disrobing me. Help me, how can you allow this to happen? First, she strongly speaks. First, how can you allow this to happen? But everybody is silent. She has expectation that somebody will stop this. She has expectation, but her expectation fails. So then she's pleading. She's pleading, going to every member. While tugging on to her sari, she's pleading to every member. And everyone fails. Everybody looks down and they are not able to help her in that unfortunate situation. They are not able to help her. All her shelter is failing, you can see. Then she's calling out to Krishna, but she's holding on to her sari. And Dushasan is pulling, he's pulling. And when she understands that this is beyond me, she surrenders completely. She takes full shelter of Krishna. Total dependence. That's when Krishna comes on the scene. Srila Prabhupada mentions about taking shelter of Krishna. He says that one who takes shelter of the Supreme Lord has nothing to fear even in the midst of the greatest calamity. This is in Bhagavad Gita, first chapter, 19th verse. It is when the Pandavas are blowing their conch shells. The Pandavas' conch shell blowing, it strikes fear in the hearts of the sons of Dhritarashtra. But no mention is there like that when Duryodhan or the others, they blow their conch shell, it strikes even 1% fear in the hearts of the Pandavas. How? How is it that just blowing of conch shell is striking fear in their hearts? How? Whereas all of this is a dharma yudh, so both parties are very convinced that what I am doing is right. Both parties are convinced. How is it that there is some kind of fear that is it's just coming about by blowing of conch shells? Because the Pandavas, having taken shelter of Krishna, had become fearless. No fear. When a person is fearless, you will find that their aura is completely different. As one progresses in devotional life, you find that they come out of fear. Fear is what? It is an anartha. What is fear? It comes because of there is a lack of fulfillment inside. The different kinds of fears exist. Fear of society, fear of expectations, fear of suffering, different kinds of fears people have. There is another word for fear called insecurity. Insecurity becomes the motivation for people to work in the way they do normally. Insecurity. People are afraid, what will happen in my old age? So let me work hard to accumulate wealth so that in the old age I can feel free from fear. I don't need to be afraid. Imagine how fear becomes such a motivating factor for day-to-day decision making in life and even the direction in life that we take. That is fear. How amazing is devotional service that the devotees of the Lord, they become free from fear. And this is seen that there are like these devotees, book distributors, when they go out on the road and they are distributing books. There are 100,000 kinds of fears that any ordinary person will have even if they are pious to do some activity like that. Because there is a fear of condemnation by society. There was one devotee, he was distributing books and on the road, signal. And then it so happened when he knocked the window came down and it happened to be his friend from 20 years ago. So he said, "Arey, tujhe kya hua? Bhikhari ban gaya kya tu?" So the devotee said, "Bhikhari main nahi, tu hai." Now imagine if that devotee had that subtle thing, imagine what all things go in the mind, when you see a person from your previous situation. You think that, kya bolega mujhe dekhkar? What he will say? What am I doing? Oh, I should play safe. So many things go on. But unless and until that devotee was so confident and fearless, how could he have told him on the road that fellow is sitting in a luxury car and this devotee is standing inhaling smoke on the road and he is saying, "Bhikhari main nahi, tu hai." So this is called fearlessness. Where was the fear being on the road? And it's a fact. Aren't we begging on the road? We're begging on the road actually. But he is able to see. So this is how we understand that a person achieves fearlessness in Krishna consciousness because of the dint of the realization and the very fact that Krishna is present with. Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna tatra partha dhanurdhara tatra shrir vijayo bhutir dhruva nitir matir mama. The last verse of Bhagavad Gita, wherever there is Krishna, there is victory. Victory, when you know whether you are going to be victorious, where is the fear? So that's the entire idea that have I taken shelter of Krishna? This is what distinguished Arjuna from Duryodhana. Both were actually fighting. But because Arjuna took Krishna's shelter, so he was fearless, Pandava was fearless. Maharaja Pariksit, Srila Prabhupada says that Maharaja Pariksit also, because Maharaja Pariksit was so fortunate, he got the shelter of Krishna right from the womb. Right from the womb. Our process of Krishna consciousness is all about cultivating the habit of taking shelter of Krishna. That's what it is, in essence. In essence, day-to-day spiritual life is all about cultivating a habit of taking shelter of Krishna. And practice means what? Just like a child who's trying to ride a cycle is going to fall for sure. So in our practice, the attempts may fail, but don't worry, that's the whole idea, that's the whole aspect, that we are trying to practice. So Maharaja Pariksit, he was trained like that from childhood, from birth, to take shelter of Krishna. He saw Krishna in the womb, born and brought up in a devotee family, had so much special mercy of Krishna right from the womb that he was saved. So what happened in his life when he came through calamities, when Shringi cursed him, what does he do? Immediately take shelter of Krishna, because that's the training. Mind is trained to take shelter. Difficulty, take shelter. What does he do? He's also taking shelter of Krishna means what? He didn't book an appointment. Bhagavad Katha by Sukadeva Goswami, banner laga diya sab jagah. He didn't put it like, he didn't arrange. He's taking shelter means what? We are waiting for Krishna's mercy to come. That's what Pariksit did. He just packed up and went on the banks of the Ganges. We all went to Shukratal, right? That's the place. Sukadeva Goswami spoke the Bhagavatam, isn't it? So Pariksit Maharaj went there waiting. Krishna will send somebody. And so then Sukadeva Goswami comes there, and then Pariksit is delivered. Bhagavatam, 7 days, 7 nights. He hears continuously. He is delivered. Taking shelter. Mind is absorbed, fixed. He is able to do that. Srila Prabhupada mentions one place. He says, since the Lord is the original source of all emanations, enlightened persons, intelligent persons seek shelter of the Lord, just as birds who leave the nest again search out the nest to take complete rest. It's a very nice example Srila Prabhupada gives, that how do intelligent persons, how they take shelter. What do? The birds who leave the nest, they go searching for food, and then they come back again to take complete rest. That is shelter. That yes, this is the place where I will be satisfied. This is the place where I will become peaceful. This is the place of no anxiety. So this is Krishna consciousness in practice, wherein we are trying to cultivate the dependence on Krishna by taking exclusive shelter. Give it a try. And what happens? We find that we can become satisfied and peaceful. This is why in the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita it is mentioned that the Siddhis, Bhuktis and Muktikamis, Sakale Ashanta, only Krishna Bhakta becomes Shant. Because this aspect of ashray, shelter, gives him so much of peace, tranquility and satisfaction. Srila Prabhupada, he mentions in the 5th canto of the Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada mentions in this chapter of the forest of material enjoyment, he says that how in material life, there are so-called gurus, swamis, teachers who cheat the general public. Why? Because any education which does not culminate in cultivating shelter towards Krishna is cheating. Any kind of education or sermon which does not inspire the Jivatma to take shelter of Krishna is cheating. So Srila Prabhupada says, thus he is cheated both ways. He thinks that he is going to become spiritual, but they misdirect him and they don't teach him to take shelter of Krishna. You know, the demigods, they have some sakam, they have some desires. Material desires are there. But they also know that when situations goes out of hand, what do? They go to Shvetadeep, they are chanting Purusha Sukta, and they are taking shelter of the Lord. And that is what pacifies them. Lord gives answer, that's what pacifies them. Srila Prabhupada, he actually mentions this in the Bhagavatam 7th canto. He says, the duty of everyone is to take shelter of the Supreme Lord and thus become free from material desires. This is another aspect of taking shelter. One is misery. Because of misery we take shelter. That is one thing. For sadhakas also on the journey of self-purification, Srila Prabhupada says it is the duty. Duty. You understand duty? Duty means the karna hi hai. Why? So one can become free from material desires. So Srila Prabhupada gives an instruction. The duty of everyone is to take shelter of the Supreme Lord and thus become free from material desires. He says like that. These material desires are the ones which actually prevent us from developing and experiencing Krishna consciousness in totality. We can't fully absorb, we can't remain absorbed because there is so much of mind fluctuation and restlessness that comes up because of material desires. So Srila Prabhupada says, cultivate the practice of taking shelter. So, there is a very nice bhajan of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Sharanagati, which is Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Jive Doya Kori. Would you like to sing this bhajan? Can I put on the screen? Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Jive Doya Kori Swaparshada Sviya Dhama Saha Avatari. So this is actually Sharanagati. This is the book of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Sharanagati. He has mentioned Sharanagati is 6 steps of surrender. And in this bhajan, what is special is that it cultivates exclusive dependence or taking shelter of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So can you see the translation, please? Translation. Out of compassion for the fallen souls, Shri Krishna Chaitanya came to this world with his personal associates and divine abode to teach Sharanagati, surrender to the ultimate Godhead, and to freely distribute ecstatic love of God, which is ordinarily very difficult to obtain. This Sharanagati is the very life of the true devotee. How do you understand that a person is devotee or not? Because he surrendered. He's taking shelter of Krishna. He's ashrita on the ashray, who is Krishna. The ways of Sharanagati are humility, dedication of the self, acceptance of the Lord as one's only maintainer, faith that Krishna will surely protect, execution of only those acts favorable to pure devotion, and renunciation of conduct adverse to pure devotion. It is so subtle that's why materialists, they cannot understand, because you cannot quantify faith. You cannot quantify bhakti. You cannot. So the materialists do not understand. That's why they conclude कि पागल हो गए हैं. They're crazy people. That's how because they cannot quantify. Bank account थोड़ी ना है which they can see कि इतना भक्ति हो गया है उसका. So these development of these principles are very subtle and deep within the consciousness. And that is our aspiration. And this is the practice. This bhajan talks about practice. The youthful son of Nand Maharaj, Shri Krishna, hears the prayers of anyone who takes refuge in him by this 6-fold practice. So how do we cultivate dependence on the Lord? It's by this 6-fold practice. Bhakti Vinod places a straw between his teeth, prostrates himself before the 2 Goswamis, Shri Rupa and Shri Sanatan, and grasps their lotus feet with his hands. I am certainly the lowest of men, he tells them weeping. But please make me the best of men by teaching me the ways of Sharanagati. He says, you make me the best by teaching me how Sharanagati is. So this is conscious practice that we want to cultivate of developing Sharanagati. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Jive Doya Kori Swaparshada Sviya Dhama Sahavatari Atyanta Durlabha Prema Kori Bare Dana शिखाया शरणागति भक्तेर प्राण दैन्यात्मनिवेदन गोप्तृत्वे वरान अवश्य रक्षिबे कृष्ण विश्वास फल भक्ति अनुकूल मात्रा कार्य स्वीकार भक्ति प्रतिकूल भाव वर्जन षडंग शरणागति होई बेजहा ताहर प्रार्थना सुने श्री नंद कुमार रूप सनातन पदे दान्ते त्रिनाथो कोरी भक्ति विनोदा पदे दुहुन पद धोरी कांदिया कांदिया बोले अमित धाम शिखाए शरणा गति कोरो है श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु जीवे दया कोरी स्वपार्षद स्वीय धाम सहावतारे Jaya Pancha Tattva, Jaya Pancha Tattva, Pancha Tattva, Jaya Pancha Tattva. Jaya Gauranitai, 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 Jaya Gauranitai. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gaura Haribol, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribol. Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki. So any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. As you mentioned that and nothing can give us shelter, and then you said about even institute cannot give us shelter many times. But while we are serving in an institute, we definitely many times take shelter in institute, institutional positions, posts, facilities. So how can we exclusively take shelter of Krishna, even serving in the mission of Srila Prabhupada, even serving in the institute, but depending upon the shelter of Krishna? How can we do that?
How can we take shelter of Krishna even while serving?
Institute, then definitely there are times we tend to take we tend to think that material positions, posts, facilities, it will give me shelter.
Yes. So how do we practice this? We practice this by managing our expectations. What happens is that we take shelter like this. You know, the whole aspect of the cultivation of Krishna conscious life is all about introspection. So in the beginning, just like in the beginning of the class we mentioned, that by conscious introspection and understanding that what is my aspiration? I am making some prayers to the Lord, but what is my actual consciousness? Is my consciousness only if I have that position? Is that my consciousness? By becoming conscious, then the next step will come wherein we can exercise self-control. That is one way. Ultimately, our movement is not a process of self-control, it's a movement of mercy. By performing exclusive devotion, engaging ourselves continuously, keeping engaged in the spiritual principles, rooted on spiritual principles. For example, having the consciousness that serving Vaishnavas, that is the spiritual principle. Chanting the holy name in total and absolute dependency is the actual process. So even while we are in the clearing stage, even while we are in the process of growth, then even if these disturbances come, they will not have much effect and they get cleared with time. So a practical application of that is the aspect of sadhana bhakti. Just like in the Nectar of Devotion, Rupa Goswami mentions about the items of sadhana. The intensity while performing the aspects of sadhana bhakti, while cultivating absolute dependence and shelter on Krishna. The more we do that, the more you find that all these other things go away. That is the entire essence. Practice makes perfect. So let's focus on the goal. Just like, when you are, if there is some obstacle, when you are saying something far away, and even if there is an obstacle, if you focus there, you can't see this. So that's why, that's the whole aspect. Srila Prabhupada mentions there is one purport. He says that cultivating shelter of Krishna, that is the mission of human life. He says like that. So there's a big lofty goal we have. And so we endeavor and then we cry for mercy. Okay, any other question or comment? You're behind.
प्रभु जी, मेरा क्वेश्चन था कि शरणागति करने के लिए जो वो क्वालिटी चाहिए, जैसे कि शरणागति में बहुत सारी डिफिकल्टी भी आती है, कंप्लीट शरणागति नहीं कर पाते हैं, बीच में कुछ ना डिस्टर्बेंस आ जाता है, तो अभी कंप्लीट शरणागति के स्टेज पे तो पहुंच नहीं पाते हैं, तो व्हाट इज द राइट स्टेप टू कल्टिवेटिंग मोर शरणागति?
कीप डूइंग इट, प्रैक्टिस मेक्स परफेक्ट। सो यही तो प्रोसेस है हमारा कि जैसे हमने कहा साइकिल कोई चलाना सीखता है तो पहले तो गिरता ही है ना। सो यही तो प्रैक्टिस में है। व्हाट वी हैव डन, दैट्स व्हाई आवर आइडेंटिटी हैज टू बी क्लियर। हम क्या है, हम डिवोटीज नहीं है, हम प्रैक्टिसिंग साधकास है। वी आर कमिंग इनटू एन इंस्टीट्यूशन where we are being allowed, we are getting facility to be able to practice devotional life. So practice means what? There will be failure also, there will be mistakes, there will be no focus, unswerving focus nahi hoga, unwavering focus will not be there, the mind will be here and there, we'll slip sometimes, we'll fall, but we continue, we take shelter. And shelter mein so many things are there. You saw 6 aspects of shelter here, we saw in Sharanagati Bhajan, that's one. Then what about Panchang Bhakti? Take shelter of serving Vaishnavas, take shelter of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, take shelter in the holy name. Idhar fail ho gaya to wo wale mein jao. 64 items of sadhana bhakti have been mentioned by Srila Rupa Goswami. 64. Ek do mein fail hua na, baki to hai. So the overall aspect is to keep endeavoring. Krishna sees the effort, he sees the endeavor and the sincerity that we are doing. The acharyas see that. That's how mercy comes.
Hare Krishna. Very nice class, Nitai Madhava. So I was just thinking, like you spoke about, if we take our shelter of the institution is under the country, and the country is at a war. So we are also institution. So if someone may think that there is no guarantee taking shelter of this institution also because it is under a country. So what do you feel? What should be the answer?
We understand the institution is a facility to be able to practice devotional life. And as Srila Prabhupada, he said, ISKCON is my body. So this is basically what he created. So our alliance is on the principles that Srila Prabhupada established. It is not on the material aspects that constitute the institution. So because the taking shelter of the institution from a material perspective, it means that I am getting my food, shelter, clothing, emotional security, all this because the institution is giving me, and it has to give me. That expectation is there, that I surrendered myself to the institution has to do this for me. That is taking shelter of the institution from that material perspective. But shelter, ashray is of Krishna. It's not of the institution. Institution is a place we are coming and serving, we are offering.
So that means this approach of taking shelter of the institution is what will hit you back, not the process of, the core process of bhakti in this institution.
The whole process, this institution is meant to facilitate the practice of devotional service.
I asked because it could create a confusion, so that's why a specific thing I asked.
You can add, Prabhuji, your point also, please. The understanding. Okay.
I think what you said is very right, that if you come to take something, we have come here to go back home, back to Godhead here when you come. It should be like that. Prabhupada says, no, this a chaste moment in the Vedic life, even the sun cannot see. Once she gets married, she enters the house and even the sun cannot see sometimes. Only when the dead body goes out, the four shoulder she goes out. Similarly, we should come to not take the shelter of the institutional structure, but to do service within that structure of Krishna.
Yeah.
If that is not clear, then, and it also plays it's very important that devotees work on very strongly, because samskaras and prarabdha comes up after a few years staying in the institution. And Bhagavatam mentions kalara doshanidhi rajan. So the first thing when the mind is little disturbed, is to find fault in the place where you are. And that's the institution then. So to be very cautious. Thank you.
ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की, जगत गुरु श्रील प्रभुपाद की, निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे।